Thanks for joining us today on Cece and Doc Talk, where we talk about everything under the sun. You never know quite what you're going to get, but you'll always be entertained.
So today we're going to talk about what makes our relationship successful. And we've been together 20 years, but the idea actually came from is because Cece says
that we needed to do a happy 20th anniversary special because it's our anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Dun, 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 dun. And I had no idea where she was going with that, so I immediately launched into some ideas. And so from my perspective, I'll just go first. No, it was your idea
Sweetie,
originally.
that's what makes our relationship work. You always get to go first.
Well, and as long as I do everything your way, then it's fine. So
that is true also.
There is some truth to both of these. I go first. I usually come up with the crazy ideas. You tell me all the reasons why that won't work and why that is stupid and crazy. And then you go, no, here's what we should do. Anyway, I can't even give an example of that one, but that is very true.
You're making me sound very bossy.
At times. Again, as long as I'm willing to go along with you being the boss, it works great.
Actually, that's not entirely true. Do you remember? So that back when we first got together, we had a roommate who that was a friend of ours, and it was funny. She was actually the one that pointed out that both of us were alpha, because if you recall, you and she synced up period-wise. And we always thought it was so weird that you and I never synced period-wise. Not all those years together before menopause. We never synced. And so
we're both alpha.
We both decided that we were alpha. So there are some things that I'm in charge. I definitely am in charge. I'm the boss. It's my way or the highway. And there are other things that you are definitely in charge. It's, your way, I go along, etc. So I do think there's kind of an equal distribution of power, which is why we have also always preferred the word partner, even though we are officially spouses and married, but you and I have been wives in heterosexual relationships, and we never felt like that was a very equitable word.
There's traditional roles that get assumed with that.
Right.
So we to this day, we still prefer partners.
Right. And as it is, being a lesbian, people were always like, which one of you is the guy and which one of you is the girl?
Yeah, which one takes on the traditional roles?
Like, no, it doesn't work that way. So partner has always worked with us, but of course...
So in bed, you take on the traditional roles. The male.
Sweetie, after 20 years in menopause... There ain't nothing happening but sleeping.
I know, we do what normal people do in bed. We sleep.
And we do a lot of it. Yes.
That's true.
Absolutely. All right, so back to you were going somewhere with this, and I just took us off on a tangent.
Well, again, as long as I follow your lead, I'm good. No. So if you were to describe what makes our relationship successful in one word.
One word?
One word.
Oh, my.
My one word would be respect. I think we have very incredibly deep respect for one another. And what that looks like in action is we don't use sarcasm that is degrading and at the other person's expense. No. It's not targeted towards one another. We really want to hear what the other person has to say, usually once you have their attention, because if we're talking in the other room, I can't hear you. And you can't hear me. And
or if you're on your phone trying to follow up on a text or an email or
whatever. If you don't have my attention, then it's not fair game to,
Right.
But I think we do want to hear what the other person has to say. And that brings us back to, we talk a lot. We absolutely talk a lot.
Clearly.
And even when we first got together and we were figuring out, are we crossing this line or not? What did we do? We didn't jump in the sack and immediately have this passionate romance. What did we do? We sat down and talked about it.
Well, that's what girls do.
The implications. What are we doing? Is this anyway, is it a one-time thing? Is it a forever thing? We sat and we talked about it. So we talk about everything sometimes before we do. So anyway, do you have one word? And I'll shut up and listen.
I actually really like the word partnership. I really think we have a very equitable partnership in all ways. I think in terms of the division of power, I think in terms of the division of responsibilities and duties, I think in terms of the mutual respect that we have for one another, even our skill sets, I think are very complementary and very equal. And so I think partnership really does describe us in so many ways. And then, we're partners in business, we're partners in life, we're partners in this podcast. We are truly partners in every sense of the word.
Well, that's because I'm codependent.
Because co is actually my last name, so codependent.
I am codependent.
You forgot to say happily codependent.
Okay, I'm happily codependent. And you once defined codependency as...
I don't even remember now how I defined it. Did I define it?
Where you feel like you're having to give up part of yourself in an unhealthy way. And as long as you and I are aware, conscious of the fact that we are codependent on one another. I mean, we hardly go anywhere without one another. It's like, I'm going to the store. Are you going with me?
We go to gynecology appointments together.
We did our colonoscopy appointments together. We just do everything together. And so
we always have 20 years of doing everything together. And yet both of us traveled for a living separately as well as together. Certainly we liked it more when we were together, but you and I have the ability. So I think this is what makes our codependency a bit unique to the bad codependency, and why we call it happily codependent is you and I have the ability to be independent, to not be lonely or, and to be very self-entertaining when we're alone. We have the ability to be alone with ourselves, to be our own best friend. We choose to be together the majority of the time because we enjoy each other's company.
Well, and that's a great point. I love that. And we do operate that way. I remember when we were traveling a lot for a living, and we had this whole discussion around, sometimes when you land, then you end up connecting with a client and you end up going to dinner and you're in a different time zone and it gets late. And at what point do you check in with one another?
Right.
And there was a difference between feeling obligated to check in and wanting to check in.
Right.
And so we came to the conclusion early that, if you have the permission that things go sideways with travel or whatever, from a safety perspective and somebody's concerned about you and haven't heard in hours, at least check in. But you do it out of respect.
Sure.
And we wanted to, and sometimes it would be late nights and, you may not hear from me for hours or whatever it was, but just know that I'm okay and I'll send you a text when I'm back in my room.
Right. Well, and it's certainly a lot easier now in the world of technology that we live in. I mean, let's face it, you and I were dinosaurs in the world of travel. So, we were traveling back before cell phones and texting really became prevalent. And so, back then it was about picking up the phone and calling and checking in. And so it wasn't as easy. We didn't have as easy access to
as a text.
Connect with one another. But we definitely, I remember very distinctly having that conversations because you and I were both married before and we felt very obligated to, check in at certain times with the exes because of whatever reason. But with one another, it really was very much an understanding. I also think it helped that both of us traveled separately for a living too, because I understood that, it gets late and you're with a client, I had the same, we did the same thing. So I had the same experiences. And so I think it's a little easier because we knew what the other person was literally going through because we'd walked in those shoes. Right. I think sometimes when somebody's sitting at home waiting for the phone call and they've never been out.
Or they're questioning
what's happening. Right.
So because there's an implied trust.
Right.
I mean, the level of trust we had.
Right.
Was so huge.
I also think that it really, really helps that you and I are not jealous people. Not with each other, not with previous partners. We're not jealous people. So we don't operate that way anyway. We don't have that underlying kind of trust issue to wonder what's happening, could something be happening, etc. We just aren't, that's just not who we are.
Well, the only time I would get jealous is if you were out on the road and you'd go to a really nice steakhouse and tell me what you were eating, and I'm at home eating a bowl of cereal because I don't really make myself my own food. I would get jealous then, but in terms of jealous of what you were doing and wondering now,
Right, and I think that's a unique quality that we have in our relationship as well, is that inherent trust and lack of jealousy and lack of wondering, what's going on when I'm not there. So again, back to the unhealthy codependency versus what we consider our healthy codependency is, unhealthy codependent people, they do wonder, what's happening when I'm not there. So they feel the need to be with the other person so that they know what's going on and they're not threatened by that. You and I, it's a completely different brand of that.
You know, the other part that we realized is when you were making up a story of why you were late before you even pulled in the driveway, that's an unhealthy relationship.
Right.
Right? Because I don't want to be making up a story before I even walk in the door because I know you're going to be upset about something. I want the full freedom to be able to come home and just be excited to see you.
Right.
Not be wondering, you know, I was like, all right, I got my story made up. And
I don't think you mean like making up a story like it's make-believe. I think you mean like actually trying to
justify
mentally,
why I'm late,
right,
or why I took one more client call, or right, I said I'd be home at 6 and now I'm not going to be here till 7, and having that whole the whole litany of all of the reasons why it's a little bit later than expected or whatever it is. But we talked about if you have to make up, if you're already thinking of your excuses and the rationale because something didn't go as planned, it's unhealthy.
Totally.
And I remember you went to lunch shortly after you got divorced, and your lunch went hour after hour after hour because it was with a friend that you hadn't spent time with in a long time, in years.
I love you, Rayanne.
And and you felt obligated to check in because that's what it was before. We had a long conversation. It's like, you don't have to check in. You're out. I mean, you're out with your friend. Enjoy. I didn't. So we had to kind of readjust some expectations early.
And I think that brings to mind some very specific things around values. So you and I share very similar values, and both of our top values is freedom, right? So that's exactly what you're talking about, is having the freedom to do what you need to do and know that your partner, you know, respects and understands that sometimes that's going to be, you know, 20 minutes, and sometimes there's going to be a check-in, and sometimes there's not going to be a check-in, and there's not a need to justify, like you said, or rationalize that behavior. But so going back to the whole idea of shared values, you and I really do share a lot of values. In fact,
ingenuity
we almost have the same, as when we've done values work, we've almost got the same list 1 through 5.
Even when we've done them independently.
Which is, truth be told, probably a little unusual for couples. I mean, we really are very well in alignment with one another. So, you know, one of the things that I would suggest if you're trying to find common ground with your partner or spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend, is really look at those shared values and how you connect on that side of things.
You know, I remember when we talked about the freedom thing and this may come across as very wrong, but within the right context, it makes sense. And that is, you know, we were able to live as if we were single,
right,
but respect the fact that we were not.
Right.
So we could have some of that freedom. If you wanted to go out and go to the bar with your friends and have a beer or whatever, go have a good time, whether I'm with you or not.
Right.
But not putting those constraints and restraints on one another.
To be clear, set your gay stereotypes aside. She's not saying we had an open relationship.
Right, yeah. It wasn't like, you know, you have the freedom to live single in a
Sweetie,
sexual way.
Can I have a girlfriend, sweetie?
Only if no. Okay, so moving right along.
That's funny. I never call you sweetie. I've called you sweetie 4 times during this conversation. That's so
okay,
weird.
Pumpkin.
Okay, darling, let's just move on.
Okay, Blueberry, let's go. Okay,
Pork chop.
You know, I also remember very early, okay, spaghetti, here we go. You know, I remember one person in our work world that said, is there nothing that you two are not compatible?
That was my dad, actually.
I remember it from Carol.
I guess we've been asked that more than once.
Is there any way that the two of you are not compatible? You know what? 20 years later, I'm still thinking about that. Now there are times that, you know, we'll be helping one another with a project, and I'll go, hey, can you grab this here? And I'm thinking you're going to grab it with your right hand and twist it to that direction, and you immediately grab it with your left hand. So no matter what I'm thinking, you come at it from a completely different approach than I think you're coming at it with.
And I'm like, could you be a little bit more clear in your instruction, please?
I'm like, I thought I was. It's right there in my head. Can't you read it?
No, I can't see in there.
So I think...
Use your words.
But for the most part, you know, like all of a sudden going from traveling weekly for a living to not, all of a sudden we both adjusted. Boom, here we are.
I know. It is so funny, you know, when the pandemic started, we literally flipped that switch overnight to being, and we were, you know, world travelers. We were on the road almost every week, and there was always a, you know, business trip mixed in with a personal trip, mixed in with some other kind of trip and some other kind of So there was always a family member with us or something going on, and some
It
kind
was
of
chaos.
we had, and I'm sure there will be an entire podcast about chaos, but it was so funny though, because we were both actually tremendously exhausted when COVID hit. And I think it was ultimately a tremendous relief to both of us to just be absolutely grounded and not have to make any excuses for why we weren't going anywhere, doing anything, not on a plane, not doing a social event, not
No, we
connecting.
filled every moment with something else. And we started
Unfortunately.
new businesses, and we were still working 16, 18-hour days, and my work went crazy. And we have an entire basement or section in our basement that is designated to luggage. And there were times that I know me personally, I would have 3 different suitcases packed because of different directions. Come home in between. We were only 30 minutes from the Denver airport. Set one suitcase in the door, spend the night, have dinner, say hi, and the next day off again. Come back, switch out, and have the 3rd suitcase ready to go.
Yep.
It was pretty relentless. I mean, I'm 1 million miles, actual miles flown, 1.5 million, all domestic.
I know, which is crazy.
It's absurd.
Crazy. It's interesting you mentioned the suitcase thing. Like I'm so thrilled to not have to buy 3 tubes of mascara. One for my bag, one for your bag, one for the extra bag.
One for at home, and then we lose one.
Maybe it was 5 tubes
And whenever
of
you
mascara.
let me borrow something, I always lost it, so there was a 4th one in reserve.
It's just nice but anyway, I think the point was we just adapted. And so there's another strength that I think we have in our relationship is that we're tremendously adaptable. Yeah. We really adapt well to change and even in our current life situation, crisis. I mean, it doesn't mean we like it, and it doesn't necessarily mean we want it and try to make that, but we do adapt well. And I think that's huge. You have to be adaptable and you have to be resilient in this day and age. Otherwise, the world can kill you, especially when you're an empath. I mean, really, I have the cancer to prove it.
That's just painful. Oh, and adapting to that, we're learning. Oh, I'm so screwed up. Anyway, I was going to state the other thing we do really well is we share all the responsibilities and duties.
We do.
You go to the grocery store, I go to the grocery store. We both share in the kitchen, laundry room, projects, households, whatever else. We both jump in. And now it's not that we don't correct each other, because I will reload the dishes after you. You will correct the laundry settings and make sure the dryer is on a different
And then
setting
I'm like,
than
you know
I
what?
have
You do you. I'm out. Like
Yeah.
once you start micromanaging that stuff, I'm like, okay, you're up, because I'm
Yeah.
out. But again, I mean, it's better to walk away and just let you do your thing. If you really don't like it, the way it's done, just here, I'll let you do it. So I mean, that's okay, right?
I think so.
Sure. So, and I agree with that. I mean, and for the most part, I can do most of the things that you do, and you can do most of the things that I do. Now, there are some projects that you prefer and I don't prefer. I could do it, but I don't really want to. So, I'm glad you like it.
Well, like putting all these podcasts and starting new businesses and all the technology in the house, you do it.
That'd be me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just go right here, click all these things and blah, 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 and it works like this. And I go, yeah, no, it doesn't work that way.
Right. Building garages, managing contractors, handling all their excuses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That would be you.
Yeah, let me call them and see what their latest round of excuses are. Oh, didn't we say that was an unhealthy relationship earlier? All right, there's one more thing that's coming to mind that I want to talk about in this. Equal love.
Yeah.
And, there are times that in relationships, and this isn't all relationships, but in many relationships, you can see or you can know from your perspective that one person is more in love with the other.
Or at least you and I sometimes feel like we interpret that from some relationship. So we should say, this is really...
You can see that one person just adores the other, and the other one is kind of like, all right, I'm tolerating this other person.
I mean, I don't want everybody super over-scrutinizing their relationships. This is truly like the world according to Cece and Doc right now.
Well, okay, so I'll go back. I knew that when I got married, sorry, Bob, I could tell he was more in love with me than I might have been with him. And I loved him. And we had a great marriage, but there was just a little bit of an inequity in terms of what I considered as the value of love, in terms of that inherent, passionate, adore level. And I think that...
Well, you were also secretly looking for the right woman, but you didn't realize that at the time.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah. These podcasts would be easier if none of our friends and family were listening to them. My point being is you and I think, fell in love to an equal level early. Now, in the beginning, and I've mentioned this to you, I wondered, oh my gosh, is she falling in love with me? Am I falling in love with her because she's the first woman to really cross the line of being this hardcore lesbian relationship, an open relationship with me?
Was it hardcore? Was it that hardcore? I mean, both of us are
hardcore.
I'm definitely a lipstick lesbian, so I don't know. But.
Right. But I mean, so I did. I mean, it's like, all right, am I falling in love with you because you're willing to go there with me? And I was able to dispel that myth of my own, to go, no, I mean, I just absolutely adore you.
Well, you were also, I think, okay, so again, at some point we'll do another podcast.
You just adored my abs. That was
I did. What I really did was I coveted your abs. They're abs that I could never in my entire life have because we have very different body types. And so what I really did was I admired them to the point of coveting. So I figured if I can't have them, if she's my partner, then I can have them by, osmosis or, whatever. There was someplace I was going to go when you were talking about...
that we both adore each other. And
well, and now I remember. So, I agree with you, but, you were also holding back initially because the way that we came to this relationship, and as I said, we'll have a podcast at some point about that whole saga and soap opera, but the way that we came to this relationship, I think, initially it would have been easy for both of us to go, okay, is this for real or is this just... a passionate release of something that neither of us really knew we were carrying around, this, this idea of being with another woman and things like that. And so I think you were holding back just a little bit, just in case it wasn't what you thought it was. But I think deep down we both knew that, this was a 20-year, 30-year, 40-year, 50-year relationship potential. I think I was just more willing to embrace it initially, and you were holding back a little bit.
Do you remember we were laying on the hammock in the backyard, Colorado Springs, and you started pounding on my chest?
Well,
we use whatever. Don't take these words to the compliance
in a gentle way.
A gentle way. You're like, hey, and you're like, for this relationship,
wasn't like Tarzan.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, you said for this relationship to work, you have to open up all the way and give it everything. And I remember I went, you mean this rusty, heavy door that's kind of like, it doesn't want to open?
Yes,
and
that one.
And you said yes. And I did. I kicked that door open and got on the dance floor.
And 20 years later, here we are.
That's right.
And it doesn't feel like 20 years. Like, I don't know where 20 years went.
We don't argue much. Well, okay, we bicker on occasion. Again, that's when I don't do what you want me to do.
Actually, I truly think, I agree with you. Like, we didn't have an argument, not even any kind of bickering or nitpicking for at least 10 years. And then, I think most people thought
and
that
you stopped tolerating me? No.
Most people just thought that was crazy abnormal, right? And it was our normal. And then I think, certain life events happen sometimes and, stresses. And then you and I do a great job of creating chaos in our lives. And so some of that sort of seeped in and we had some of that. But to your point earlier, we never really lost any respect for one another. And we still didn't use that biting sarcasm. And we were so purposeful when we left our marriages and then came to this when we left our heterosexual marriages and we came to this relationship as a homosexual couple, we were so hell-bent on making sure we didn't bring those bad dynamics and bad habits that we'd had in those relationships to this one. So we worked very hard at
we were very purposeful with our words, right? Not saying stuff that would trigger one another. Always, again, back to that respect and listening and trusting and being curious. I want to know more about that before I respond. And those are hard things to implement.
Absolutely. And both of us were really good students of the 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. So don't take things personally. Always do your best. Don't make assumptions, and be impeccable with your words. And so we sort of lived by those principles.
We spent some time in the beginning as well creating our guiding principles to our relationship. And we would come back every month and revisit them. How are we doing with this? How are we doing with that? And we spoke some, it's like, okay, I think I'm doing really well with this one. I could do better at this one. And we did it from a personal perspective as the observer of how we're doing. And we made some course corrections along the way because of that.
Agreed. And I think what I would say is, if you're going to create that list, again, it comes from that whole shared value perspective, right? If you're going to create that list, make it short. I think the one mistake we made is our list was a laundry list, because we do have a tendency to overcomplicate and maximize everything. So we did. Keep your list short and succinct, but it's a great tool for building a positive, respectful relationship. Absolutely.
I think it's great. I think we should wrap this up so you can go pound on my chest.
With that, have a wonderful day. Make your relationship the best it can be. Happy anniversary!
Happy anniversary,
Happy anniversary! Da, 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 da.
I do love you and adore you.
I love you and adore you too.
Mwah.
Mwah. I can't believe we got through that entire podcast and we forgot to mention that it was also your birthday today.
It's my birthday?
It's your birthday.
That's right, it's my birthday. Another year younger.
You're X years old.
Many decades. I actually love getting older, just to let you know. I loved when I turned 40, and I loved when I turned 50. I'm turning 56.
You are.
And
I'm surprised you admitted that.
Oh, I'm fine with that. I'm not sure when I hit 70 or 80, but I know I'll love those too. And 90. And I'm absolutely going to love turning 100. So I'm about halfway there.
So because we've been a little preoccupied with some other things in our life that we've mentioned in other podcasts, cancer, I'm going to give you the only birthday present that I've got for you.
Let's hear it.
It's the Marilyn Monroe version.
Oh.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Amy. Happy birthday to you. Mwah!
Wow, thank you. You have such a beautiful voice.
Thank you. That's all you get, though. I didn't even get you a card.
That's all right. I love you.
I'll have to do something nice for you on social media.
Your favorite thing to do.
It is. It is. I love you. Happy birthday and happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, and thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in to Cece and Doc Talk. We'd love for you to follow us on social media at Cece and Doc. That's CCNDOC. And you can visit our website at ccandoc.com. We also take monthly donations to support this broadcast if you're so inclined. We'd love to hear your comments, suggestions, and questions, and we'll do our best to respond. Thanks, and have a fantabulous day.